This is like a script. It's not a game script. It's a script.
Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
Because the most subtle nuances of emotions could be seen on screen. With the PlayStation 4, games have now finally reached that stage.
Welcome to the Citizen Game Podcast, where we're going to delve into the dark depths of video games that are trying not even to be movies, but to be television. I'm Ryan.
Good TV.
Say your name.
Oh fuck. We definitely did not do that last episode. I'm
Say
George.
Your name, right? Okay. Yeah. So Alan Wake, the first one, not the recent sequel. This is Sam Lake's next game after
Yeah, so that's a good place to start already.
Alan Wake,
which is,
after Max Payne 2, yeah.
Max Payne 2 came out in 2003.
Yeah.
And this game came out in 2010.
7 years.
Now, 7 years is becoming a normal development time. But it wasn't like that back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, not through the 7th gen era. That wasn't normal.
And I remember when this came out, I was reading Game Informer when this came out. And it got a big press push.
Yeah, do you have, I mean, it was the next game after Max Payne. It was a, 360 HD game. Do you remember at all, like, the general reception of the time?
So I remember the promo stuff. I didn't read, like, reviews for the reception. I mean, no, I think I read a review, and it seemed positive, generally. They thought the collecting stuff was boring and annoying, but they liked the writing.
And it's hard for it to not. The consensus I got from reading older articles and just people's opinions were, it's kind of hard for it not to be disappointing or underwhelming after 7 fucking years of build up after Max Payne. One of the most mind-blowing games of all time.
Yeah.
But playing it now, when you're buying it for $3 on Steam.
Yeah. I have seen people. There's another podcast that I listen to who I won't name because I don't do free promotion. So I'm just kidding. It was the Shrieking Shack podcast. They talked about this game and they said it was like a game that, at least for them, had the reputation of a good story, shame about the gameplay.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree, but I think that might be representative of, at the time, reception.
So there was a video by I forget the fuck. I'll reference the name in the notes, whatever. But he makes the videos called What Happened To, which he does research into, like, the development history, and kind of confirmed what you may get, like the hints you get in the gameplay. It confirms that this used to be an open world game. They had to restart development like in 2008.
Is it just called What Happened?
Yeah, it was literally just called What Happened To.
Alan Wake, What Happened?
Yeah.
Okay, that's Matt McMuscles.
Yeah, and it's from his previous stuff. They're pretty well researched, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Like I watched this like LA Noire one.
To Max Payne.
It's pretty simple. It's just that they realized the open world thing wasn't working.
Right, and you can see ghosts of the open world in the whole game because there's those extended, like, vehicle sections, which it's bizarre that the game has driving mechanics at all. And you drive through a pretty, like, expansive. There's at least one section where you drive through a pretty expansive terrain, but there's nothing in it.
Yeah, and the other thing that definitely put things into context that he brought up in his video. Do you know what came around about like 2 weeks around the same time?
No.
Fucking Red Dead Redemption 1.
Oh, that makes sense.
So as far as like hype and what people were excited and paying attention to, it makes sense that Alan Wake kind of got the short stick. He said like Red Dead had already sold 1 million copies by Alan Wake had already, had sold 100,000 copies.
Yeah.
But playing it now, I had a great time, and
Me
I
too.
like
Yeah, I think it's
I
fun.
like the core gameplay even.
I do think the core gameplay is a bit weird, in the sense that it feels like, okay, I know this. You're going to get mad at me when I say this, right? Ludo narrative dissonance.
I'm waiting.
I
Go
think
ahead
there
and
is
explain
some.
yourself.
I think there is some. I think that the core gameplay is too actionized, basically. Especially now that I've played Alan Wake 2.
Okay, so I mean, whatever about you using the forbidden word, but
Yes.
I was asking myself, why wasn't this a survival horror game?
Yes.
And
Why
because they
wasn't
made
it?
Alan Wake 2
Yeah, they
a
turned it into
survival.
there's so much more emphasis in Alan Wake 2, and I know we're gonna have an episode about that. But unlike,
But what you have to remember is this is a survival horror game. Remember, this is the era of fucking Dead Space. This is Resident Evil 5.
yeah,
Like survival horror is fucking dead in the eyes of the
I know,
publisher.
and it had
You know,
become so they all just became third person shooters. I know,
yeah, this
I know.
I'm just saying, yeah, it's just that's at least your explanation of like why is it like this? Well, it is a horror game. This is what horror game. This is the at least viewing it in the lens of being a horror game. This is the destitute state that horror games were in
2010.
It is, yeah, it is a lot better now.
Yeah, I mean that's obvious because look at how much money Alan Wake 2 got for being much more of an old school survival horror game.
Yeah, it was definitely, you had the no combat horror games like Outlast and Amnesia, and Resident Evil
And those were all
7.
indie stuff.
Yeah, you started with that, and then you started getting into Alien Isolation, Resident Evil 7, where the big games all of a sudden, oh, you can do horror. And that's kind of where we're at now. It's like you can make a fucking horror game in there as well.
The revived Resident Evils, I feel like, are like what comes first to my head about that.
Absolutely.
Where it's like because they're bringing in back so much of the old survival horror mechanics from that post 4 they kind of abandoned.
But this game came out in 2010.
So you've got 2 guns, you've got grenades. There's guns. Very unlikely you ever run out of ammo. You have not fully regenerating health, but sort of. You don't have the limited health items like you do in Max Payne. It's funny because you have that in Max Payne, and then you have it again in Alan Wake 2. But you do not have that here. You have like a different way it does healing with the lights.
So I just want to compliment the core gameplay that is kind of often shit on or dismissed. Which no, there isn't a lot of depth there. But it's like an 8-hour game. And the gimmick of you need to shine the light on dudes before you shoot them. If too many of them surround you, you have to do crowd control with your special items. And then a few mix-ups with vehicle sections and different types of enemies. There's enough there for me personally to be fully engaged for an 8-hour video game. And I think it's paced pretty well too, as far as like handing you more powerful flashlights and more powerful weapons. I mean, a good comparison, Red Dead Redemption, which
I've never played.
So, it's a standard third-person combat Red Dead Redemption, and the other elements of that game are what make it special. The exploration and the open world stuff. So the third-person combat doesn't have to be anything too special. It's more to support the other elements. But if you were just having, like you put a room with some chairs in and some cover. With each of their base combats, you throw like 10 bad guys in there. You're gonna have a more fun time with Alan Wake than Red Dead Redemption.
Really? Okay.
No, I don't think that's controversial.
I mean,
I'm just saying,
like I mean, the one big thing it has for the core combat is the flashlight.
yeah, and that's enough for a shorter game. And I had more
Yeah.
fun with it than lots of like, kind of mediocre third-person shooters. The other element is the cinematic element, which I'm going to try and summarize what was put really eloquently in Racevick's video talking about control, which is kind of the way that Remedy makes their games cinematic as compared to other games. So, in a Call of Duty game, it's cinematic because it's scripted and they're literally like actors hitting their marks. The way Remedy does it is it gives you cinematic mechanics. Like the flare is a cinematic mechanic. A bunch of guys are crowding around you. You pop that flare, the camera pans out to both show you how surrounded you are, and that helps you in gameplay, but it also looks cool as fuck.
Yeah.
Max Payne, the slow motion. I don't even need to explain that. You control
Well,
the slow motion.
I feel like this can get us into our discussion of the opening because you said you wanted to talk about the tutorial.
That it's really bad. It's like bafflingly bad compared to the rest of the game.
Yeah. In what way?
I would call this clumsy and gamey. And
yes,
very.
yes. The tutorial has a problem because you talked about cinematic, right? So the way that you would, so this is being paced like a movie too. And the way you would pace, you can't start with a bunch of action in your movie, usually, right? Especially your horror movie. Like the opening of the movie would be Alan arriving in Bright Falls. But we need a way to have a tutorial. So it's like, okay, well, he has a dream. So this isn't even really happening, even in the game. And then a voice tells him what to do in very like undisguised gamey terms.
They put you in a pin with a bad guy, and you can't escape it until you do the dodge correctly.
Yeah. It's very, very, it feels like it's something they had to get past. Because they're like, how do we
thrown together?
Yeah, it feels thrown together at the last minute. Because they're like, how do we explain the action mechanics of this game without breaking the flow of the actual narrative? We just have to make this thing at the beginning that's not actually even part of the narrative, really. Because immediately after that, he wakes up, and then it's like, then we're properly into it.
There's even like a part of the game I fucking laughed out loud at in the beginning, which is where the voice tells you some cryptic thing, and he goes, to its ports I've been, do you understand? And Alan just goes, no. The light just disappears and starts building shit.
I have something important to tell you. It goes like this. For he did not know that beyond the lake he called home lies a deeper, darker ocean green, where waves are both wilder and more serene. To its ports I've been. To its ports I've been. Do you understand?
No.
Follow my light.
Yeah.
But that kind of represents the whole thing. It's so fucking abrupt and like in your face and unsubtle.
Yeah. Before it's even really established what's happening.
The opening line, I'm really glad they didn't continue this in Alan Wake 2, which is saying Stephen King's name over and over again.
Yeah.
I would say this might be Sam Lake's most clumsily written game, which could be very much a function of, how they had to fix it last moment, relatively speaking.
I mean, there are two moments, and the one is kind of funny, but there are two moments where he's directly, I think there are even more where he's directly compared to Stephen King.
Yeah.
Which I know because you say this is Twin Peaks, but this is also Salem's Lot.
So, have you seen Twin Peaks? Because I really
yes.
wish I could have caught up on
I
that
have.
before playing this. But
Oh yeah, you totally should. But I have. So it's a little Twin Peaks and a little Salem's Lot, or the generic Stephen King story.
yeah,
because
it's
the setting is in the ups. Yes, it's in Maine. But also it is. I mean, it's not in the Pacific Northwest, or is it? Is it in Maine?
I don't think they specify. I think isn't it unspecified place in America.
What does the wiki not? It's No, it's Washington, like Twin Peaks.
Okay,
so it's much more like Twin Peaks in that sense, not Maine.
got it.
But so it's Pacific Northwest near the Canadian border, which is where Twin Peaks is. It's a weird small town, but it's also Stephen King in that the main character is a writer. Have you seen Salem's Lot?
No, and when
Salem's
with
Lot?
the main character being a writer, the first thing that comes to my brain is learning secondhand about the Dark Tower series. About
that's
his
interesting.
his characters like saving him from a car crash, saving Stephen King.
What I would
That's what
think
came to my brain.
Well, so Stephen King wrote one novel where the main character wrote Carrie, where the main character is a teenage girl. His next two books were Salem's Lot and The Shining, in which the main character is a writer. And a lot of his main characters are professional writers.
Which I, of course, seen the movie.
Yes, but so the main character in that is a writer who's even also a recovering alcoholic.
Doesn't he directly say it was like The Shining?
I'm sure he does. Game? I think he does.
Yeah, I hate that shit. It's like, we don't, I get it. There was an axe. I get it.
The one I think is, yes, but this is so, and also him being this superstar horror writer. I mean, there aren't a lot of superstar novelists left in American culture. And probably the only one who's a horror writer is Stephen King.
Yeah, I was trying to think of, is there famous writers anymore? I'm like, well, the Game of Thrones guy,
George R.R. Martin. That was also
he's famous enough to go on talk shows.
Yeah, but the only other one it feels like is Stephen King, and especially the only one who writes horror novels. So you have that, and then there's the FBI guy.
Oh, Nightingale.
Yeah, Nightingale, who keeps calling him different writers' names.
Yeah, Hemingway, and
then the last one is Stephen King. He calls the last time you meet him, in the first game, he's like, okay, Stephen King. Which I thought that one was funny. Because at first I didn't understand what was happening with him constantly calling him a different name. And then I was like, oh, he's just saying the names of famous writers. He's like Raymond Chandler I think one of them is Raymond Chandler.
He had a whole list down.
Yeah, he was like
every for last.
Yeah, every writer he could think of, he's like written down.
But I think when you play as him for that brief period into, he's like muttering Hemingway.
He is. Because that's, I think, the first one he calls you. And so that's the one they reference in 2.
But once you get past that, like you said, once you get past the just devastatingly jarring tutorial, it starts out proper how you would expect this game.
Yeah, he comes in. It's the opening after the tutorial is very slow, actually, because you come into town, you
learn about the people.
Yeah, it takes a while. It takes a while to get to the actual action of the gameplay, which I think is good. You're in the house, you kind of explore the house, and then scary stuff starts happening. Your wife disappears, and then, you're off into the woods. But there's a good, 20 minutes of just building stuff up that I think is really good.
Yeah, and I guess you would call that a prestige element.
Yes, that's what I mean.
It's take your time.
It's paced like a film, in that it's we have a setup instead of something like Max Payne 1. Where it's
except with the funny thing is that Max Payne 1 does do the tutorial better, which is, all right, kill your wife and child's killers. You probably won't fuck this up. Just point and click,
Yeah.
That's how you shoot a gun in this game.
Yeah. But it does jump into the action much more, and it's obviously trying to be a different thing. It's a different type of movie it's imitating.
And there's the non prestige elements is that when it's gameplay time, it's mostly just unbroken combat, throwing you through different things.
Yeah, it's like there is kind of, it's not the same. So it's a bit different from, like you talked about, the standard way that games happen, because there's like the sections where you're just walking around and the sections where you're fighting, and they do feel very different. And so it's like you play it is a bit like the standard thing of like you play a bit and then you get a bit of a cutscene. Except they're usually not quite cutscenes. They're usually like walkie-talkie, explory things.
Yeah, which kind of gets into, it feels in a sense that it's got kind of a more old school sensibility, which I guess in 2010 wasn't that old school. But at the same time, you've got, here's a comparison. I know you haven't played Control yet.
I'm halfway through Control.
Oh, but Control not going to be on this podcast.
No, because it's not very movie-ish.
Because this was another thing that the What Happened guy posted about. No, sorry, Racevic, which is that was published by a smaller publisher. The publisher who published Naughty Bear. That was one of their. Do you remember fucking Naughty Bear?
No, what?
Just look it up later. Just a terrible and infamously bad.
Oh, I remember hearing about this.
Yeah. It's so you don't have this has it's older, but it has that Microsoft money, which you can really see when it comes to the pre-rendered video cutscenes.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the prestige Elma's having that Microsoft money in a way.
Well, and the desire to be like, this is a real story.
Yeah.
This is like a movie, which I don't get from Control as much.
No,
Control's story structure is very video game.
And it is also open for exploration. You wouldn't really call it a world, but you can kind of explore it freely with side objectives, as you know.
Yes. Which is cool. I mean, but okay, so back to Alan Wake.
Well, we talked about. Here's a question: is Alan Wife's a bitch?
I don't know if I
phrase
say
it in
that.
the most confrontational way possible.
I don't know if I would say that.
No, it's just when I was first playing it. And she's like, this vacation, actually, you can write here. My first reaction, I'm like, I don't know. That seems kind of toxic. But it has been a while since he actually wrote something. So yeah. Also, I'm sorry. Sorry to Sam Lake for this now 20 or 13-year-old video game, but I've got to deduct points for the wife. Being trapped in the lake. You had a dead wife in the previous game. We got missing wife in this one. We got to deduct a few points for that. It's just like God of War, where it's like you got another dead wife.
Yeah, the God of revealing that off screen you have another entire dead wife, like an entire marriage that also ended in her dying.
Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna knock points off for the first one, but you do it twice. I gotta take some points off for that. At
least his wife is more of a character in this game.
She becomes even more interesting probably in 2, but can't talk about that yet.
Right. But there's at least some characterization because Max Payne's dead wife is just like a cardboard, like a stand-in, just like a dead wife shaped cardboard cutout, basically. At least Alan Wake is something.
No, and I forgot because 2 leans into like her photography. I forgot that they already established part of that in this first game.
Yeah, and it comes up even more. I know you haven't played it, but it comes up even more in American Nightmare.
Yeah, so which I'll get to before we talk about 2.
Yeah. But so here's an element that I want to talk about because you encounter it in this first level. This is something I've loved in all of the Sam Lake games I've played, which is the little in-universe media he makes.
It's so adorable.
I'm
It's
talking
amazing.
specifically about, obviously, Night Spring.
And finally, one that like some of the soap opera stuff doesn't land with me as much in like the Max Payne games. But you know, I've seen some fucking Twilight episodes. You know,
Yeah, and like they do, especially because this is the only one. Well, okay, so no, Address Unknown, which is also a stand-in for Twin Peaks, obviously ties in Max Payne 2 because it has like, you know, and it actually ties in even more in Alan Wake 2. These little episodes, I don't know if they say this in the base game. I don't remember. They say it in American Nightmare that Alan Wake's first job was writing for this TV show.
I'm pretty sure they say that in the
So
at some point in the
implicitly,
base game.
these might be episodes he wrote for them, and in Control, I did catch the thing where they established that this show is made by the Federal Bureau of Control.
Yeah, and
like it is a Control-funded show.
And so, of course, I can't. There's nothing I can prove, or you know, that Microsoft was responsible for lessening the fun of these. Like from what I hear about Quantum Break, which I haven't played yet, it's has less of Sam
the
Lake's
fun stuff. Like there's not little
entertaining
TVs.
shticks.
There's not little TVs that you can watch. Yeah, that's lame.
And I definitely, it's nice that it's here. And I definitely, basically, Alan Wake 2 kind of came out at the perfect time, which I'm not trying to shift it towards that, but just in the retrospect of the type of game that Alan Wake 1 was more common back then. A shorter single player story game with some things to make it shine, and that's becoming more of a rarity. But okay,
well,
so
I
where
wanted
do
to
we
say
want to?
about
Oh, go ahead.
those because the other big thing is like the radio broadcasts. Did you find those?
I did list. I can't remember any of them because I didn't when I revisited this on YouTube to remind myself I didn't listen to them. So please enlighten me.
So they're basically just the radio host you meet in the town.
Oh
like,
yeah, I remember.
They're him talking to local people, and it like reacts to the things that have happened in the story.
Which I guess would be like the fog, kind of, right?
Yeah, I guess the scene where you go to the I guess I don't think that's the because he's not like under siege or anything, so I don't know. If
it's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other piece is Alan's writing, the pages you find.
Which is those are infuriating from a
Infuriating?
Shut up. They're annoying in a UI sense where it's like I just want him to keep talking when I put the page away. I don't want to like yeah, but I still like them, of course.
I like them, and I think one of the most interesting ones is when you are in the flashback in his apartment and you can read the page from his book, his Alex Casey novel.
Yeah. Oh, you know, we should say R.I.P. James McCaffrey.
Yes, R.I.P. He's not Alex Casey in this because Alex Casey isn't in this, but he is Alex Casey.
But he does. No, he voices a part when he's reading that book. I know that because I just watched it.
No, you're right. Yeah, because Alex Casey, even in this, when he's not as important, is still Max Payne.
Yeah, and I really liked what just briefly. I liked what you said, which is it doesn't really matter if like an artist's last work was good or whatever, but it is nice that his last game like was Alan Wake 2, where he really got to fucking go ham.
Yeah, he talks. He's in that game so much. He's in that game a lot, and he's really good in it. But in Alan Wake 1, you just have this like hint that Alan is kind of Sam Lake, and that he wrote that he's like No. Well, okay. You mentioned 7 years. It had been 7 years since the game had come out from Remedy, right?
Right.
What's Alan Wake's problem at the start of the game? He hasn't written anything in years.
I was definitely a gestation problem, if you will.
Yeah, he's had this hugely successful crime series starring a character who's basically Max Payne, and then he hasn't made anything in a long time. So it's like there's obviously like self-insert elements to that. Even more than later we see him on a show with Sam Lake.
Which I guess if we're gonna continue that metaphor to Alan Wake 2, the solution is like just have fun with it. Get freaky, you know?
Yeah, get weird. I mean, Alan Wake
Get
2
weird.
also took a crazy long time after Alan Wake 1.
But there were at least a game.
There were games
or
in
two
between,
games in
yeah.
between that.
Yeah. But it's just interesting because now I haven't done it yet on this podcast, but I keep accidentally saying, okay, Alex Casey, Max Payne, Alan Wake, and Sam Lake, they mix together in my head.
All by design.
The
baby.
names, like I keep accidentally saying one name when I mean the other. So I'm probably gonna do that. But yeah, I just like the little details, the fun Sam Lake isms, I guess. But the actual story, what did you think of Barry?
Barry was by far the biggest surprise and joy that I got from this game.
I just didn't think you'd have a friend.
It's not just that he's a friend, it's that like the type of character that he is. If this were a Rockstar game, his job would just be to be annoying.
Yeah.
And I thought that's all he was going to be. But no, he actually demonstrates some smarts in goofy and fun ways. Like the Christmas lights is just a perfect joke. It's clever,
But
and
he's
also really
right.
silly.
Yeah, but he's also kind of right because it is just light from like light bulbs.
The section where you're in the stage, the
I mean,
musical
obviously, we have to talk about
section.
that. That's the best section in the game.
But just as helping you form a mechanical relationship to him, so you like him even more.
Yeah,
I think what really surprised me was when they don't know what to do, and so they just get drunk together.
yeah.
and
On the
It reminded me of kind of why Witcher 3 was a big deal, where basically someone said like, well, what if you're hyper competent, hyper violent video game protagonist had friends that he drank with, and you took time for that, and just how much that adds. So I really liked Bear, and by the end, basically the investment test where they hug, I was like, oh, I was invested,
Yeah, so-
and that was absolutely shocking to me that I liked this character.
So this is not a spoiler, but there is in the bonus levels that you didn't play. You are guided by a ghostly specter of Barry.
Well, now I really have to play those.
Yeah, because it's like you're in the dark place, but you're guided by Barry. But yeah, so you have the game. The problem is, it's been a while since I played it, but the problem with the story is this like unfolding mystery. I don't know how interesting the mystery actually is.
No, and it's not. And when you break down what's literally going on in the game, it's very much Alan Wake has to get to a place.
Yeah, he has to get to a
Which-
place to get a thing so he can stop the big bad thing.
So this game has a TV structure with a fucking previously on Alan Wake section,
Yeah.
which I like those in other games. It's really nice in something like the Yakuza 0, where you play 2 long chapters and then switch protagonists. And also The Witcher 3, that reminds you in this long ass RPG what you were doing if it's been a while since you've played. They're just kind of completely unnecessary for your little 8-hour action adventure game that you could finish in a weekend.
Yeah, I don't get why you need. Yeah, I mean, I get because it's trying to do a Twin Peaks thing, but the plot just isn't that complicated. You gotta just go to point A to point B. Like the biggest complication you get is like figuring out, because it's not even you're figuring out who's behind it, because who's behind it is a ghost lady.
The biggest revelation is just kind of what the fuck is going on, which is Alan Wake has to write himself out of this situation.
Yeah.
By making a story that where, you know, he has to have struggles but still succeed, and
Yeah, it's very meta.
And it has the TV structure of it. It kind of tries to end chapters on little cliffhangers, kind of in the style of like, this is like a weird comparison, but Call of Duty 4 kind of does the same thing, and they had like the 24 writer on that, and of course Alan Wake 2 kind of does it better, even though you control the more of the pace of that game. But yeah, this is just too, and maybe this would have worked better in the open. Maybe it would have been more necessary if this was an open world game.
Oh yeah, if there were like side missions you were doing,
where you could get fucking distracted and forget what the main plot was, which is interesting because that's the whole reason why they stopped doing the open world thing, because it's like we wanted to have a focused narrative. But no, as far as like things happening and the escalation of problems and getting mixed up into like, oh, now he's captured by the police and now the sheriff lady is on his ass, and like all that is fine and engaging in the moment. But yeah, it's just like, and then something else happens, and majority of the game you're just wandering around through the woods.
I do think some of the scenes are pretty sick. Like I love the scene at the end of, I don't remember what chapter it is, but when he gets picked, when he's chasing the guy who he thinks took his wife, and he gets like picked up by the dark presence.
Right. That
and he has to like spark a flare, and then he falls into the lake.
The Sam Lake.
The Sam Lake, yes. That was cool as fuck. That's also where they showed off that Microsoft. Or not Microsoft. Is it Microsoft? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
where
Microsoft
they show off with like the flare and the cutscene. But like a lot of it, I think we should talk about the most memorable set piece, which is the concert.
Yes, and this now is a Remedy tradition. With have you haven't gone to the Ashtray Maze yet, right?
No, I'm not in the Ashtray Maze yet. No. But I mean, obviously, I know the one in Alan Wake 2, which is like now makes the one in Alan Wake 1 look kind of lame.
But it's still really good.
It's still really sick. Like
it's good compared to a lot of the other contemporary. I've talked about this. I like the let's call it the let's kick some ass musical moments in video games. Halo 2, Breaking Benjamin.
Yeah.
Which I still have a soft spot for. But this is obviously better.
Because it's like the music is integrated into the pace of the scene.
The fact that he can work, that they work with a band that will just write original music.
Yes, which I think they started doing all the way back in Alan Wake 2. Because not Alan Wake 2, Max Payne 2. Because I believe they wrote the end credits scene, the end credits song for Max Payne 2.
Poets of the Fall. And yeah you're right. And there is just so much, because some games will do this with a licensed track. You have the weed burning scene in Far Cry 3, which has a terrible dubstep song featuring Shaggy. I mean, the song's fine, but you know, in combination with setting weed with a flamethrower, it's kind of, I mean, Far Cry 3. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's that you can have the lyrics reflect, and not only that, the pacing of the song. You pay extra close attention to the Remedy versions of these. They have the song written where they can loop it in specific ways for how long you enter certain sections, and it's just also you never have to worry.
The funniest incarnation of that is in Alan Wake 2, when he will keep saying, "Bring this song to an end." If you stand at the final thing without climbing the ladder, he will keep saying that last part.
It also avoids the problem of when you use licensed music, at some point that license will end, and apparently video game companies, even if you're fucking Rockstar, can't keep those licenses.
Yeah,
But if you're just friends with the
yeah. And that's something that
all the GTA games
and Halo 2, I believe, right?
that one's a weird one because I don't understand how it works where it doesn't play in the new graphics, but it plays in the old.
I
It's
think
like,
it's
is that
because they're
legal?
treating. I think this is a speculation. I'm not a lawyer. The new graphics are a new game, but the old graphics are a re-release of the first game.
But then again, it's like Spec Ops: The Line is just off of like Steam and shit, and it like I don't know. All that shit's fucking stupid. But you can avoid it if you just
Yes.
have
This
a sick
happens in
ass band
TV
make
all
your
the
own
time.
music. Right.
Like where TV shows are not re-released or re-released with altered soundtracks.
But yeah, that the section of course is awesome, and I already talked about that. It really makes you like Barry, and
Yes, and it and I also love that the song is not just Poets of the Fall; it's them as like characters who are in this. So like, the song is also telling you what kind of music these guys used to make.
it's diegetic. Well,
It's
diegetic
diegetic.
in multiple senses.
Yes, it's
like,
not. It's like a fictional in-universe band made this song, and it like because eventually you find out that they are like influenced by the lake because they had like the water mixed in with their moonshine or something.
right.
And they're like, and in Alan, they retcon a bunch of stuff into them in Alan Wake 2, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's super cool that like because like those guys are kind of jokes when you meet them for the first, and they're like these old guys, and then you later meet them in the after the concert scene, you meet them in the psychiatric home.
Oh, well, now it's
Yeah.
a good time to talk about.
Wait, I want to talk. Let me finish my sentence.
Okay.
They're kind of pathetic when you first meet them in the diner, and they're these like 8 old guys, be like, yeah, right. But then you hear them, and they kind of kick ass. You realize they used to kind of kick ass as like a metal band.
Which who doesn't like some old rockers like
Yeah.
demonstrating?
Yeah,
that-
being
that,
like,
you
oh
know,
yeah, these guys were actually kind of cool, and they were like actually doing this. It makes it when you see them again, and it's like you're like, okay, these guys are like really, they have talent.
Yeah, I mean, which helps sell a little bit. Like, oh, they're magic.
Yeah, because
The
they're
later
also
games.
art. Well, because it's like they're artists. Even in the first game, it's like they're also artists, like Tom and like Alan.
Real ass artists.
They're
you know?
artists who have been touched by the dark presence. But what were you going to
Okay.
say? Sorry.
Well, the most important thing to bring up, which is that this movie or this game is Rounders for people with schizophrenia.
Okay, you've said this to me before. I've never seen the movie Rounders, but I understand. I understand that it's about gambling.
Let me give you a little quick summary, or more of like a report on Rounders, which it's a movie about poker,
Mm-hmm.
about not just like tournament poker, but playing against mobsters, like no limit and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And the message of the movie is that you are a good gambler. You are good at winning. Like, you just need one good run, and you will get your girlfriend back. You will win all the money back. You do have
should
skill.
sell your
It's not
car.
just chance. Yeah.
You should mortgage
And-
your house.
You should take a big fucking loan from John Stamos. Because you will be able to pay him back double.
He will not kill you.
So, oh wait, sorry. Nope, he didn't get that loan from him. He got a loan from a lawyer who gives him a speech because it's a Jewish lawyer who says, "My parents wanted me to be a rabbi, but I wanted to be a lawyer, and I picked that over being a rabbi because I knew it just wasn't me." With him, which is him saying to Matt Damon, you need to not be a lawyer. You need to fucking gamble, son. And so the reason why this is Rounders for people with schizophrenia, of course,
Because it's true.
Your wife isn't dead. She is trapped in a ghost world. Do not fucking take your medicine. Do not listen to those doctors. Those people in the force are real and they're trying to hurt you.
People
and you should
around
have a firearm.
People around you are being replaced. They are being replaced with demons, and you need to shoot them.
Hey, you want to rope control into this? There is a government conspiracy.
Yes, the books you're reading are not fiction; they are real.
The things you see on TV, you're on the TV. You're on the TV right now, and your family members are on the TV.
The police,
and they're talking to you.
The police are your enemies.
They're fucking
Don't
in on
let them
it.
take your guns from you. It is. You're right, because it is just like, yeah. What if all the classic schizophrenic delusions were true? I mean, that's what makes it so good.
Absolutely, 100%.
But it is very funny.
I mean, it is a funny game, like just full stop, which is I don't want to call it its saving grace, but Sam Lake is a funny writer, you know?
Yeah.
And there's not that many games that are successfully funny on purpose, relatively speaking. So it's great knowing that you have a creator that no matter what they make, you're gonna get a good chuckle in somewhere, even if it's about some of the most dire circumstances. Again, funnier than anything Rockstar's put out, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we know our opinions on Rockstar style humor.
I will say what's probably unintentionally funny is Alan Barry getting drugged by the diner girl, who's obviously like not herself.
Yeah, where it's like they don't like seem to notice that she's clearly possessed. Yeah,
that part I was like kind of rolling my eyes a bit. Like you need to make her more normal, or Barry and Alan more suspicious, or something.
So what do you? I mean, we've gotten through. I guess the other thing is about the plot. I do like the way they work with the darkness mechanics in a weird way. Like the fact that the safe place is like the well-lit room where it's just so lit up there's no shadows. Or that like the safe place is just a tunnel with like light. Like they do a lot of fun stuff with the fact that the main way that the monsters work is that they can't exist in light.
It's like that part with all the light switches is just a fun image to put on screen.
Yeah.
And again, kind of what separates Remedy's work from the other big boys and other prestige game. So here's something that kind of annoys me that some people will say, which is this game is hyper realistic. It doesn't have an art style. It just went for realism. Like, no, that's not true. Like it is going for like The Last of Us is going for the most realistic graphics at the time, but it has like an art style.
Yeah.
And Alan Wake having that Microsoft money, but that isn't enough. When you just have realistic graphics, you get a Ubisoft game, which are some of the even with the current graphics being what they are, there's quite few arresting images in the newest Assassin's Creed, unless they're literally recreating an historical monument. But you have things like this, like a room just filled with fucking light that will stick in your brain forever.
Yeah.
Even though it's just a small thing.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the ending? Because
Sure.
there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the boss fights, and that I think they're pretty lame.
So when you say boss fights, what do you mean? Like, I'm struggling. Aren't they mostly just a bunch of dudes usually?
No, they're like stronger dudes who move really fast.
Oh.
Go like.
There's not an efficient way to take them down, even if you get good at the game. You can't like speed up. Like you
I
just
just
have
think-
to fucking wait.
They're kind of lazy, in that they're just like guys who move really fast and have more health.
Yeah, and the thing is that Alan Wake's 2 design really didn't get that much more complicated, but it's ammo scarce survival horror. So the fucking pacing of the combat and the actions you have to take don't matter. Like the reflexes don't matter as much. But something like this where you have plenty of ammo, you just have to fucking shoot them a lot and wait for an opening. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, I think Alan Wake 2 does boss fights much better. Because I was going to talk about the ending, and I like in the ending that it's not like another of those fucking boss fights. You just shoot her with the flare, which I think is, because I was trying to think, it's like he's not going to have a big showdown, so I guess that's the best way of doing it.
I think there's probably a lot of games that came out before developers realized you don't need to have a boss fight if that's not what your game has been about up until now. And you just need to have a climax of some sort. And yeah, I mean, Gears of War 1 has like a bad boss fight that you haven't been fighting bosses at all during this game. Why would you have like a big guy that you have to shoot a bunch with a gimmick? Halo 2, I don't need to say anymore. But I'm glad that this game did realize that we do not need a guy that just has a fuck ton of health, you know?
I mean, they realized it at the end.
Well, except like those guys they're not even like, they don't treat them as bosses.
Yeah, yes, they do.
In a way, nah.
Because like these are the only ones who are like identifiable characters, because they're like specific people who are now possessed.
You know, I think well, go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. Like they're bosses because they're like individualized and they're stronger. Yeah. So like, yeah, they are the bosses in this game.
Which I don't think, I've said this before, it's like I don't think Remedy has ever made a super elegant or technical combat system.
No.
Which is rarely a problem because they make very stylish and satisfying combat, but that's kind of where it runs amiss, is in a situation like that where it's like you don't even really have the mechanics to create a better boss, and you don't need to make a boss fight because you already have designed lots of great climaxes in the game.
But the ending is very deliberately confusing, where it's not a lake, it's an ocean, and I feel like that's another twin. So this is not a spoiler to say that the ending of Twin Peaks is fucking confusing.
Yeah, I would imagine not.
The ending of Twin Peaks is confusing, I think, and this is like deliberately an homage to that. Like it's kind of deliberately where you're not sure. And obviously Alan Wake 2 is also like, much like, I've not seen Twin Peaks The Return, but I believe Twin Peaks The Return.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I've not seen Twin Peaks The Return, but I believe it's also equally confusing, much like Alan Wake 2. Where it's like you waited this long to get an answer and you got one, but only sort of. But the ending where it's, because that's even a joke they bring up in Alan Wake 2, where he's being interviewed by Mr. Door and he's like, it's not a lake, it's an ocean. What does that mean? And Alan is just like, I don't know. So that's fun. But I mean, maybe I was less annoyed by it because I was playing it. We played this game or decided to start playing it like when Alan Wake 2 was like about to come out, I believe.
Yeah, because we should say that like before Alan Wake 2 came out, this game's reputation, it was very much like as a curiosity. It was kind of interesting, and hey, check it out. And there are people who were invested in it enough to be like,
but I bet
please make a fucking
I bet
sequel."
I'd be really annoyed if I was invested in it and then I had to wait so many years to get a sequel because of that ending. Even though, of course, there was stuff like American Nightmare and the bonus episodes that do take place after it, but are just as confusing. Like, especially, we have to talk about the ending of American Nightmare after you play it, because I don't really get it or how it connects to Alan Wake 2.
I'll get right on it.
But yeah, after you play American Nightmare, play the bonus levels, then play American Nightmare.
It's also it's just interesting that it's Sam Lake's even talked about this of there were multiple theoretical versions of Alan Wake 2, and there was even a demo of or some very early alpha footage where
I remember seeing that.
It just looks like Alan Wake 1, and just kind of this happy accident of it was delayed enough to make it more interesting.
Yeah.
Or just the sequel more interesting. But I mean, as it stands now, still, I guess even with there being a sequel, my attitude is still kind of it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it has a lot of little elements that other games don't have, and for whatever my opinion's worth, a combat loop that is fairly satisfying if simple.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna like this a lot. My personal taste, I'm gonna like this a lot better than probably quite a few. I personally like this better than the Uncharted games.
Yeah.
At least the first three.
I don't.
4 is kind of on another level. That's kind of undeniably exciting to see. But it's just a little bit more up my alley in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not even making any sort of argument for quality or artistic merit or anything like that. I just personally like it better.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it definitely has.
And of course, I like it better than Kane and Lynch 2.
Yeah, I mean,
I like a lot of things better than Kane and Lynch 2. You're playing Control. There are parts of this I definitely, even though Control has a lot more insane stuff going on, I would say what Alan Wake has, the simpleness of it is still executed a bit more effective. I'm talking about all the elements cohering together. I think I like it better than Control, but then again, sometimes I boot up Control and start throwing rocks at guys and watching a fucking destruction physics. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Control's definitely a more polished game because of that. I feel like, and I do think its combat system is more fun, and that goes for a lot. But yeah, I mean, Alan Wake, it feels like an interesting attempt to do. It's attempting to do a lot of things I think are really interesting. I like its tone a lot. I like the story. The gameplay could get kind of sloggy at times.
Yeah.
It's overall how I feel about it. And I like it for setting up Alan Wake 2, which I think is a great game.
Yeah. Probably the most exciting game to come out in a long time, or at least a game of this nature.
Yeah.
All right. You got anything else for me to say?